Hi, welcome to the Real Life Alexa channel. This weekend, I am lucky to have a long weekend. My job recognizes several of the major federal holidays throughout the year, and Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I thought it would be a really good time to visit his most famous speech. If you've been here a while, you will know I like to drop links in the description. So in the description, you will find the link to the transcript of his entire speech. I highly recommend you go and read it, even if you've read it before. If you haven't read it recently, I recommend going and reading it again. I find that while obviously some of the content was very specific to the time. I want to say it was 1963, prior to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. There's a lot of parallels between what's going on then and what's going on today. So, excuse me, one of the things that I think we don't always remember as people is that freedom, equality, justice, these things are never one fight, one win and done. It's constant. There are always going to be people out there who are less than willing to see other people maintain their rights, or would like to capitalize on infringing on their rights. And this, whoever those people are, the groups might change over time. I mean, the robber barons is a big one from history. That was sort of the end of the Gilded Age. I think that was the Gilded Age. I might be mixing up some things there. But yeah, the robber barons, that was a big, they wanted to infringe. There's a lot of historical documents on how they tried to do that until they pushed people too far. As people are wont to do, greedy people are wont to do. They push too far eventually, and people say, oh, hell no, and fight back. I have pulled out two quotes tonight from this speech that I think they resonate with me for various reasons, and I will get into that. What I also looked up, and I'm going to share before I share the two quotes I picked out, the 15th Amendment is guaranteeing basically the right to vote not being denied by race. The Section 1 reads, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude." Section 2, "The Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation." That's all well and good. I mean, it basically says that, the Supreme Court trying to dismantle the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act is utter crap, because it quite literally says in the amendment that Congress does have the power to enforce it by any means, by the means they need to, right? But the thing that really stuck out to me was when this was signed. So this amendment, the 15th Amendment, was passed by Congress on February 26th, 1869. It was ratified, which means it came into effect, on February 3rd of 1870. That is over 150 years ago. And still, today, we are dealing with gerrymandering and other voter intimidation tactics that are absolutely driven by the desire to stop certain minorities, including minority by race, country of origin, all of those things, any type of minorities. They're absolutely 100% still trying to deny people the right to vote. That's insane. But it does emphasize the point that I was making, that a freedom is not one time won and done. And passing a law does not change the attitudes of people. It does not change it's not even the attitudes, it's the habits that we learn, and we learn them from our parents, and we learn them from our community, we learn from society. Societal change is going to happen. But as with any change, there will be early adopters. It's sort of, so if I can draw this, which side? Let's start here. You get your early adopters and it goes up a little bit. Then you get the bulk of your people adopting. And then you've got your tail end. And then you've got like people who will never change. Hopefully that made sense. It's sort of a bell curve of adoption. And it's like number of people adopting. You get like a really big jump in the middle. And then change management, process management is something I've been learning a lot of, had to do a lot of. The way you approach things with change management is very important. However, you will always, regardless of whatever else is going on, you will always have people who are never in. They refuse. It's just not going to happen. So you have this real wonderful but strange mixture of people with new attitudes, old attitudes, and everything in between, right? And at the end of the day, if we are not willing to challenge our own habits, things that we do because we were taught to do it, but we've never questioned why they're done or what they're based on. So I am 100% a feminist. I believe that women should be equal to men, right? Like, we're not exactly the same, but that doesn't mean that I should have less rights than a man. I still catch myself doing stuff that is misogynistic not because I want to, not because I believe in it, but because we don't question where something came from and what it was built out of. And there's so much in our society that is misogynistic. One of the things very commonly talked about, published research studies, is that women have to talk something like 20 to 30% of the meeting for other attendees to think they talk too much. Men can take more than 50% of the meeting and talk, and they don't think they talk too much. Women standing up for themselves are called aggressive or rude. Men are called confident. So there's also language that we use as insults. And I'm sure you can come up with a whole ton of words that are basically either calling someone a woman or a woman's genitalia. And it's an insult because they're female. It's a female's term, right? Why is that? Why is it such an insult to be called a woman? Why is it? This is a societal thing that we have been brought up. This language is just around us. We hear it used every day. There's one word, the word for female dog, that I am trying so hard to get out of my language, but you hear it and you see it all over the place. Rap music especially, but other music too. But for me, the where I hear it these days are some of the artists that I guilty pleasure listen to, and dislike their language. But if you hear it you can hear it in movies. Whenever they have women fighting with each other, the first word out of their mouths is "you be," right? There was a flippin' show called The Bee in Apartment 23 or something. What the heck was that? I'm getting super off track. I am flabbergasted, shocked that the 15th Amendment was passed over 100, well, I guess it's 155 years, 1870, 1970, 30, 25, 155 years ago. And we are still today fighting for certain things that is true equality. So the quotes that stood out to me, what are you doing here, sir? Yes, I know there's a toy here, but Mom's busy. Sir, did you want to play with this? Did you want to get it? You want to get it? Oh, you do? Well, I'm so busy. This is one of his favorite toys, and we sometimes keep it. I don't think he actually cares about the fish on the end. He likes them when they have stretchy strings. If this was just like a ribbon or something, he wouldn't like it as much. So something about the stretchy rubber strings, elastic rubber, whatever those are. He loves them. Sorry, super sidetracked, but that is Kane for you. So the first quote that I picked out today, and I think that this is something I have been trying to remind myself of a lot, a very whole lot during 2017 through 2020, and a whole lot more in the past 6 months to a year. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. Apologies. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. This is so eloquent. It's saying, don't act out of anger and hate, right? Like, that's what we're fighting against. We don't want to become what we're fighting against. And one of the painful things of any conflict is that good people often have to stand against something in a way that is counter to their normal being. And it changes us when we have to go through a fight. Like, you think of soldiers going to war and having to do things that no person should be asked to do. And it does change them. That is the extreme. But even in just our personal relationships, all the way up to the national political scene, do we want to be slinging insults? Do we want to be screaming incoherently because our emotions have got the better of us? Do we want to be constantly we're getting frustrated because we're not being heard? That's the point, I think, is that people are not feeling like the other side is hearing them. But at the same time, I don't think neither side, either side, any side, because there's more than one side to these things. There's more than one political party. There's more than two political parties. There's more than three political parties. There's more than four political parties. There's a bunch of them. So the multiple sides that we have feel like we're not being heard, right? As humans, to be heard is one of the most powerful things. And when our frustration it's much easier to be angry than frustrated. It's much easier to be angry than hurt. It's much easier to be angry than in fear. And I really, really appreciated reading this quote, and it jumped out at me and was like, that's what I've been telling myself, but so much more eloquently said by Reverend King. Yeah, so much more eloquent than I've been saying it to myself. So the second quote is getting into the more well-known part of his speech. I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. To just go back, there is no one win and done. We will always need to be on the lookout, not just for our own rights, but for others as well. If someone in this country, an American citizen, is being denied their rights, and it is allowed to continue, it means it is not a right, and it means nobody has the right. Therefore, as an American citizen, it is our duty, it is our absolute duty to uphold rights of everyone, even when we don't personally like it. necessarily what they're using their right for. The best example of this is when, let's say there's an artist and you don't like their songs and you think they should be canceled, to use current lingo. No, the government cannot infringe on their rights, right? And by canceled in this specific, the First Amendment is the government cannot infringe on them. I, as an individual, you as an individual, we can say, I don't like what you just said. And in fact, one of the things that I have on my list to do about peer pressure is that cultural pressure of people saying, that's a really terrible idea and it makes you a terrible person, or it makes you like, it's a very hateful idea, it's whatever, right? Or to elevate an idea and say, that's a really good idea, we need to amplify this idea. Societal feedback is 100% normal. It is how we literally learn as children, by looking what peers are doing around us. It's fascinating. So I will do that topic another day. But governmentally, if they are trying to infringe, make laws on certain rights, then I remember when Eminem was first starting out, there was a lot of talk in Congress about censoring certain industries, and they don't have that right. He wasn't doing hate speech. He wasn't doing anything that inciting violence. He was just saying stuff they didn't like to hear, using words they didn't like because it wasn't polite language. That's a really great example, right? So I think this speech, I'm really glad that I chose to go and read it again today. I'm really glad that I looked it up and went through it and decided on this topic. I was thinking all day about what I was going to talk about, but this was what I came up with. It's so inspiring to me to see people out there living this ethos, that there are so many people out there still fighting for all Americans' rights, and not just Americans, but our Constitution. All because you're American, it doesn't mean that people who aren't American are not human, and basic human rights is a whole other topic. But really, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness should apply equally to everyone, regardless of where you're from. And we know that's not true around the world. And I think that being the case, it doesn't mean we give up, right? It doesn't mean that because there's no one win and done in the pursuit of freedom and equality and justice and all of those amazing things that all of us want for ourselves, and really everyone should have, all because we see around the world that it's not necessarily true, doesn't mean we give up, doesn't mean that it'll never happen for everyone, so we shouldn't bother, right? Like, the more we try, the further we come. We are living in one of the safest times in history. We have health lifespans that are at some of the highest. I think we might have gone down a year or two after the COVID pandemic casualties, but generally, crime statistics are down. Any type of accidents, like workplace accidents before OSHA, were way worse than, we have so much safety in our workplaces now, like just things like that. Cars, they say, oh, they're not built like they used to if the front crumples, but the reason the front crumples is the exact reason why we have less fatalities, like substantially less car accident fatalities, is because the cars are built differently today than they used to be. So we live in a very much safer time, and obviously that is also dependent on where you live in the world. It's worth fighting for. We might not see it today. We might not see the slow progress, but in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we can look back. The civil rights movement was what, 60 years ago, 60 something years ago. That's not that long ago, right? And there has been a lot of movement in that time. Yes, there is a little bit of backsliding, but progress will continue. So, okay, this video got long. I will drop the link to the full transcript of his speech, and I do encourage people to read it. If you made it this far, thank you. This was probably a little bit of a more heavy one, and that's okay. Tough topics, take a deep breath, right? We can all face and handle tough topics. I'll see you in a few days. Be kind to yourself.